Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores coming to y'all with a Rico report, also with an injury update in the middle of it, but there's a lot of things to talk about. First of all, Rivera apparently wants a franchise quarterback and has been doing his due diligence. What does that mean for Taylor Heinicke? And is this just protocol or is he serious? We're going to dive into everything he said and if we may be connected to Deshaun Watson or not. And then, like I said, I got to give y'all the big time Wednesday injury report like I do every week, to see who was limited in practice, who didn't participate, all of that type of stuff to give us a clue as to who will play this weekend, along with some roster moves and some tryouts as well. Then we got to talk about this whole Washington football team chaos thing with the NFL meeting and all of that type of stuff. I'm not going to dive into that too long because I don't have all of the information I want on it, but I'll give y'all what I know, just in case for those people who may not know anything about the situation. And then we're going to end it with some random statistics. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure you check out the rest of the channel. All of my videos are organized in playlists. I even have a comedy playlist for all of my funny videos. Make sure you check those out. Stay tuned for the injury updates throughout the week. I give y'all any updates on injuries, any random news, any important news centered around the Washington football team. So definitely stay tuned for all of that. And without further ado, let's get it. Alright, so first of all, apparently Ron Rivera wants a franchise quarterback. During his weekly interview with Junks Radio, he said that there is constant discussion in the Washington football team front office about finding a franchise quarterback, and he gets weekly reports on college prospects. He said, quote, "There are quarterbacks we like and there are quarterbacks that are in the NFL we like. You have to go through this process. If you don't have a franchise quarterback and you're not talking about this weekly, well, then you're not paying attention. And we're trying to, we really are. We really feel like that now, if we can continue to put guys in place, guys like Samuel Cosmi, draft guys like that, build up, find the free agents like a Charles Leno, sign guys like Chase Roulier, try to see if we can get something done with Brandon Sheriff. We feel good about what we have at those positions. Then you go out and you grab your quarterback. Again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to put all of those pieces in place so that when we do find a franchise guy, he's ready to roll. Believe me, that's something that's high on our priority list as we go forward, is finding and identifying who's the franchise quarterback. And there's a lot to unpack from there. First of all, he's speaking as if Taylor Heinicke is not the franchise quarterback. He seems confident enough in Taylor Heinicke to continue with him as a starting quarterback for the rest of this season, unless they trade for like a Tua or some free agent quarterback or whoever. So he definitely believes in Taylor Heinicke more than he believes in a Kyle Allen or a Kyle Shermer who's on the practice squad or any other random quarterback that's just a free agent that's just available out there. But at the same time, he's basically saying that Taylor Heinicke is not his franchise quarterback. His quote literally was, "If you don't have a franchise quarterback and you're not talking about this weekly, well, then you're not paying attention." And then he also just said that they talk about this weekly, which means Taylor Heinicke is not a franchise quarterback in their eyes. Again, I agree. I like Taylor Heinicke a lot, but I think he's a top tier backup. I do not see him as he's just too limited in various ways. I've already done videos and live streams breaking all of that down in detail if you want to find out exactly how I feel about Taylor Heinicke. But at the end of the day, I feel like he is not a franchise quarterback, but I hope he's a lifelong Washington football team player, but I just prefer him as the backup. And it is kind of weird because, I mean, as much as he says he believes in Taylor Heinicke, even though he clearly didn't state word for word, Taylor Heinicke is not our franchise quarterback, that's basically what he meant. And the fact that I know this information, that any of us know this information, means that he said it publicly. So that's really interesting as far as Taylor Heinicke goes, knowing that his head coach does not view him as a franchise quarterback. But at the same time, Taylor Heinicke is lucky, even though he worked for this, but still, this is a great opportunity to show this franchise that he can be the franchise quarterback. He has up until at least when Ryan Fitzpatrick gets back to show what he can do and earn his spot on this franchise. Whether that will be in the capacity of a franchise quarterback or a backup, who knows? We'll see. But this is his chance. It's in his hands. It's not like he's not given a fair chance. Granted, the roster around him isn't the best, but there's a lot of things that you can isolate from these games and point to and say that was Taylor Heinicke's fault. Granted, you would prefer more receivers that can get open. You would prefer a defense that can be more consistent. You would prefer a healthier offensive line. You would prefer running backs that don't fumble like Antonio Gibson. But if you really watch film, if you really know football, you can isolate Taylor Heinicke from what's going on in these games. And again, I'm not blaming Taylor Heinicke for these losses, but you can definitely tell if we had a far better quarterback in place of Taylor Heinicke, we definitely score more points and we maybe win more games than we've won. And I'm also going to give y'all a Ryan Fitzpatrick update in the injury part of this video too, so stay tuned for that. And then another part to unpack is that Ron Rivera is clearly very high on Samuel Cosmi. He hopes that he can keep Brandon Sheriff long term, and he's also high on Chase Roulier and Charles Leno. And I remember leading up to this past draft, the 2021 draft, where I was saying we needed to get a franchise quarterback. We need to trade up, do whatever you got to do to get one of these guys. Justin Fields was easily in range to where you didn't have to give up too much draft capital to go get him. But the excuse always was, we don't want to get a franchise guy until we feel like we have the roster around him so that he can succeed and succeed early. But it sounds like he already has the offensive line around him. You have Terry, you have some pretty promising receivers, especially Curtis Samuel when he comes back. And in my opinion, Scott Turner has been very inconsistent, but Scott Turner is also the one to move the ball up and down the field against the Packers. Granted, the Packers secondary already isn't elite, and then they were missing Jair Alexander, and they were banged up in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, Scott Turner had us in position to score way more points than we scored. I hate his red zone play calling, but at the same time, literally we switch quarterbacks when we're in the red zone. Aaron Rodgers scores us at least 20 points in that game, not just 10. Again, I'm not putting all of the blame on Taylor Heinicke, but elite quarterbacks make a huge difference. And literally, if you were to just switch Taylor Heinicke for Aaron Rodgers, we win that game. And you can tell that Taylor Heinicke can't do everything that Scott Turner wants to do. Granted, I still think Scott Turner deserves a lot of blame for the fact that Taylor Heinicke hasn't been running the ball like he did in that last game against the Packers where he had 95 rushing yards. I feel like that was between him or Ron Rivera telling Taylor Heinicke not to run the ball. I feel like just let him loose. If he's injury prone, he's just injury prone. You can't protect him to the end. You can't stifle his creativity and stop him from what he does best just because you're worried about him getting hurt. You even need to call up design QB run plays like you did in the first possession against the Packers. We need more of those. You need to fully unleash Taylor Heinicke. And if it doesn't work out, it just doesn't work out. But that's where an elite quarterback comes in, because if you imagine Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, a lot of these guys that you don't even have to be Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray level mobile. But if you're just at least as mobile as Taylor Heinicke, but more durable and have a stronger arm to make all of the throws that Scott Turner wants to call, but he doesn't trust Taylor Heinicke, so he's not necessarily calling them. Again, I wish he would and just let Taylor Heinicke go out there. If he misses, he misses. But you at least need to give him a chance and to let him prove to you that he can or can't do it. But still, you get that elite quarterback that has a stronger arm, that's more mobile and supposedly more durable. And then that allows Scott Turner to unleash the full offense and use the entire playbook. That automatically makes us better. So again, Scott Turner deserves a lot of blame. But I think with an elite quarterback, everybody would like Scott Turner more. Whether you like him or not, you would go from hating him to being iffy on him. And if you were iffy on him, you'd probably liking him. And if you liked him already, you probably love him. Either way, it would definitely trend upwards if we could finally see this offense, this Scott Turner offense, with one of those types of quarterbacks. And speaking of those types of quarterbacks, there's Deshaun Watson. I know a lot of people don't want to trade for him. And what it would take to trade for him, I'm not necessarily a fan of it, even though, I mean, Deshaun Watson on this franchise, we're literally Super Bowl contenders within 2 years because he makes up for a lot of the holes your team has. A lot of these teams, like I keep saying in videos, are not that solid top to bottom if you look at their rosters. It's literally their quarterbacks that are carrying, that are making up for a lot of the inefficiencies that they have, a lot of the holes and weaknesses that they have. We could be a similar case if you just added an elite quarterback here. And when it comes to Deshaun Watson, people talk about the PR hit that it would take, but honestly, I mean, how much worse can it get? Like, if there were any team that wouldn't be afraid of PR hits, it would be this one. So I don't really see the PR hit argument. It's already really bad, that would only make it worse. But honestly, how much worse could it get? I mean, we're going to dive into that situation soon, but it's just like, there's no way that's what we draw the line at Deshaun Watson with all the stuff that's been going on. There's just no way. But at the same time, Ron Rivera with his whole my daughter works in the building thing, I'm not sure how that would work. I'm not sure if Ron Rivera feels like we need a franchise quarterback that much to go against his own quote that he's had in the past. But for sure, Deshaun Watson would be his Cam Newton that would make him look better. You take away Cam Newton, granted, I feel like like it kind of goes both ways, because that team that Cam Newton had was really bad that he took to the Super Bowl, honestly, especially offensively, and Ron Rivera still made that work. But I feel like Cam Newton helped Rivera more than Rivera helped Cam Newton, and so if Rivera can get another Cam Newton, arguably better just because he's a far better passer in Deshaun Watson, then it's just like Rivera would have to really stick to those morals and that quote for him not to make that move. Because even on top of that, if you trade for Deshaun Watson, anytime you make a big move at quarterback, that automatically buys you at least a couple of years with a franchise to show what you can do with that quarterback. So if Rivera's even at the risk of getting fired, even though I don't think he is, I think Dan Snyder is honestly just giving him the keys to the franchise, and he will at least get 5 years to figure out what he can do. He already said it's going to be a rebuild process. It's going to take multiple years, and I feel like Dan Snyder hired him to do that. But at the same time, you bring in Deshaun Watson, that buys you at least 2 more years at the very minimum. And then on top of that, as of right now, technically Deshaun Watson is allowed to play, and then maybe there's a scenario where he gets suspended, he doesn't get put on the exempt list, and then you can just carry out your suspension for him this year, and then next year you're ready to go. And then as far as the deal goes, and that's my biggest fear as far as trading for Deshaun Watson, I don't want to lose a whole bunch of picks, but at the same time, the Eagles and Colts have already showed you how you can structure these deals with conditional picks. And so I'm pretty sure a deal for Deshaun Watson, whether it be with us or another team like the Miami Dolphins or the Carolina Panthers, all of those teams that are heavy into the trade talks, it's gonna include a lot of conditional picks. It's gonna be if he plays, if he's not on the exempt list, if he plays a certain amount of games a year, it's gonna be a whole bunch of if, ands, or buts in those contracts, man. And if you trade for Deshaun Watson and he ends up on the exempt list or in a whole bunch of trouble, ends up not playing for your franchise, you would just end up keeping those picks anyway. And that's really interesting too, because if the Texans end up trading Deshaun Watson away for a lot of conditional picks, then that whole thing about it's them that's leaking the rumors about him being guilty of all of this stuff would probably immediately stop, because they want to keep those picks. If they trade him away, they're going to want him to not be in trouble. They're going to want whatever team that he goes to play as much as possible so he can meet those contract terms and conditions. And so suddenly all of the Deshaun Watson news is going to finally stop leaking, because it's definitely a firm belief that the Texans are the main ones that exposed him. So that's just an interesting situation in itself. But back to the Washington football team, I mean, when you see guys like Mahomes, even though he's struggling in this year, I don't know why his offensive line is that bad. I mean, it was supposed to be top 5 talent-wise. I don't know what's going on. It seemed like it's even worse than last year. And then you have Lamar Jackson, you have Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert. You really want to get some of those guys that can make off-schedule plays, those athletic guys, crazy physical tools. Even if you're not the most mobile guy, even if you're like a Carson Strong that can just make every throw in the world, and he's mobile, he's just not Kyler Murray, but he's around like an Aaron Rodgers, you could say. I definitely feel like he's very mobile in the pocket, and that's all that really matters, because Tom Brady isn't mobile at all, but he's very mobile in the pocket. And so even if you want to just go get like a Carson Strong, who isn't the fastest, most running guy, but he can make every throw, that's physical tools. That's everything that Taylor Heinicke lacks. He doesn't have those physical tools. If you can get a guy with elite physical tools like those guys, maybe they start off a little rough, but you see all of those guys at the top of the NFL quarterback list right now, and deservingly so, because they're balling and they're making their teams better than the teams actually are. They're making up for their deficiency in talent in all kinds of ways, whether their defense gives up a bunch of points, so they're just good enough to go and score more points than their defense allows. If their receivers are bad, they're throwing them open, or even when they're not open and throwing it in the right place to where only they can get it. You know, there's these elite tools, these rocket arms, these mobile guys. In today's NFL, you can easily build an offense around them, so I prefer to at least try to get the guy with the elite physical tools. It'd be nice if they could have both, like a Matt Corral or Malik Willis, but who knows, even like a Carson Strong, like I said, who's not the most mobile guy, he's definitely mobile enough, but there's the elite arm talent. Somebody with just some physical tools somewhere, some potential. And then it's funny too, because let Maul tell it on Twitter, Jamal, he said if Fitzpatrick comes back as QB1 next year, he'll be playing in front of 13 fans at FedEx Field. And I do believe that. I mean, 13 of course is an exaggeration, but like if Ryan Fitzpatrick is our starting QB next year, there's no way Dan Snyder's selling tickets And so even though Dan Snyder doesn't make the majority of his money from ticket sales, it's still embarrassing to him for the stadiums to be empty, because again, he is a Washington football team fan. He's not just the owner, he is a fan of the team. He wants the team to be great. He makes a lot of decisions to where you can't tell. But at the end of the day, empty stadiums will affect them, even though not as pockets as much as people think, but definitely like emotionally and pride wise and all of that type of stuff. So yeah, if Ryan Fitzpatrick starting at QB next year, like, you might as well go ahead and hang it up. So I just don't see Dan Snyder allowing that to happen. I'm pretty sure Dan Snyder may not do the Dwayne Haskins where he makes the pick from his yacht, even though everybody in the organization, Jay Gruden, Kyle Smith, everybody was like, please don't do this. We do not want this guy. Don't force us to take this guy. I doubt Dan Snyder pulls a move like that, but I'm pretty sure Dan Snyder is going to be on Rivera, Martin Mayhew's, Marty Herney's, all of those guys' heads to go and find a franchise quarterback, especially in this draft. I mean, it may be so bad. Maybe they trade for a guy, pick up a guy like Marcus Mariota, keep Taylor Heinicke, and draft a guy in the first round like a Matt Corral, and then that's just your 3B, and then that's your QB room going into next year. I wouldn't be surprised if they're that aggressive at all. Now moving on to the injury report, still a little ugly as far as people who didn't participate on Wednesday, as in today. Dyami Brown with his knee injury, and we got good news as far as that. He avoided a major knee injury, so he's kind of day to day. It's not something where he may potentially go on IR or anything, but he still hasn't participated in practice in like a couple of weeks. Then right tackle Samuel Cosmi, of course, because I'm not expecting him back until after the bye week. Terry McLaurin got a day off. Curtis Samuel with his groin still bothering him, and now even right guard Wes Schweitzer with a neck injury, which scares me because Brandon Sheriff is the starting right guard. Wes Schweitzer is the backup. He's a really good backup and should be starting on another offensive line, but now who's gonna play behind him? Is that Sadiq Charles gonna start at right guard? Last time we saw him in the preseason, he didn't look too good, but we'll see. Then limited, you have Antonio Gibson with his shin injury, of course. William Jackson with his knee injury. Brandon Sheriff, of course, with his knee injury. Again, not expecting him until after the bye week as well. Ricky Seals-Jones with his quad. And wide receiver Cam Sims with his hamstring. It sounds like Cam Sims is making quicker progress than Dyami Brown, because they both got hurt in the Falcons game. But Dyami Brown still hasn't participated in practice. Cam Sims is now limited. Also, speaking of Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ron Rivera said that Ryan Fitzpatrick will have an MRI on his hip in 2 weeks. So that doesn't necessarily mean he'll be back in 2 weeks, but that does mean that they will finally look at it, because I mean, his injury's so bad, they're like, there's no point of even doing an MRI on it right now. We already know he's not going to be ready, so we'll wait for 2 weeks, give him some more time to heal, and then we'll look at it. But that does not mean Ryan Fitzpatrick will be back in 2 weeks at all. Also, the Washington football team worked out running backs Kerryon Johnson and D'onta FOreman. I remember Kerryon Johnson at Auburn, man. He was pretty fun to go against as a Georgia Bulldog fan. I respect him. Also, the Washington football team cut David Bada from the exempt international player list. I'm surprised because he looked really good in the preseason, looked good in training camp, but apparently he just hasn't looked good enough to keep on this roster. I'm rooting for him though. I really like him. And then lastly, as far as injury report and roster news, it's reported that the Washington football team loves Jamin Davis's progress, and they're finally going to give him a larger role, like actually this time. They keep saying they will, but then they don't. But it sounds like they're actually going to allow him to get a larger role in the defense. So, I mean, we're going to have to take those growing pains. He's going to have his bad plays. He's going to have his good plays. Again, I feel like that Robert Tonyan touchdown, he definitely pushed off on Jamin Davis. That should have been a penalty, but it's whatever. Other than that, I feel like he had an up and down game. But the times that he looked good, he looked really good and flashed. And I think once he becomes more consistent and confident, I think he's going to end up being really good. And now going to the Washington football team chaos. First of all, in the 2-day owners meetings that the NFL had, that they have every week, the Washington football team sent Dan Snyder's wife, Tanya Snyder, of course, because she's technically running the program, Jason Wright, the president, and also COO Greg Resch. And that says something. For that to be the only 3 people that we take, those people really matter. And I'm mostly looking at Greg Resch because he's the guy that came over from Rock Nation, Jay-Z's company. So, you know, that's something to pay attention to. That Jay-Z thing may end up being a real thing at some point in the near future. We'll see. Whether we want it to or not, just be aware of the fact that it's probably going to happen. And then also, of course, everybody heard about the 2 former Washington football team employees going up to the meetings uninvited and hand-delivered a letter at the New York City hotel where the league meetings were being held, and urging the NFL owners to release the findings of the Washington football team organization, like most people are out here doing. Almost everybody wants to know what is going on, and if Dan Snyder's guilty, get him out of here type of thing. But the NFL refuses. Roger Goodell refuses. He's taking up for him. And the sad part is, Woody Johnson of the Jets, when asked about the Washington football team investigation at the owners' meetings, he said, quote, "We're here for football," unquote. And that's just really sad, because the fact that the owners like literally don't care, or they just flat out believe what Dan Snyder did or supposedly did and all of this stuff in the emails of Bruce Allen is just okay. Like, they just don't care. They're literally not even trying to act like they care. And then Roger Goodell came out later and said that he believes that the Washington owner, Dan Snyder, has been held accountable for his actions, which is a weird middle, because that means you either believe he didn't do any, because you either have to believe that he didn't do anything at all, so he didn't deserve any punishments, or he did everything that they're afraid to let out in these emails, and then the punishment he received is nowhere near enough for what he's supposed to get. Like, whatever's going on in these emails, everything that Bruce Allen did and Dan Snyder being aware of it, being kinda suspended, and then the fact that they find the Washington football team but not Dan Snyder directly just shows they're trying to protect them. So Goodell, I don't know what's going on. It's already been reported that despite all of the pressure, Roger Goodell says that he will not release any of the info from the Washington football team investigation. And it's like, I mean, if you have nothing to hide, then why not just go ahead and release it? And then his excuse was that he will not release the investigation because some of those who came forward asked to stay anonymous. But then you have Lisa Banks, who represents 40 former employees of the Washington football team who participated in the investigation, and all of them have said that that is false, and none of them care about being anonymous. They care more about the information getting out. So Roger Goodell and all of those guys are just clearly lying. They're hiding stuff, and it's just, but at the end of the day, what can we do? And then you have Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders. He says he wants the stuff to go public, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't care about right or wrong. He probably just has a personal vendetta against Dan Snyder. But hey, man, if we can at least get one owner on board, hopefully there can be some type of momentum to get that information out there, man, for real. Maybe he's just trying to save face and be the logo and representative of the side that does want it out. Again, even if he doesn't care, maybe he just wants to get good publicity from it, especially after John Gruden already got caught up, and maybe he's like, hey man, my head coach just got fired for this, and y'all doing way worse stuff over there. How come y'all aren't being punished? So who knows what his intentions are, but hey man, I agree. Put out that information. Now moving on, lastly, I want to give y'all some random statistics. First of all, from Washington's game against the Packers, Matt Ioannidis was the highest graded player with an 81.5. Montez Sweat, second highest with a 76.6. Then Jonathan Allen with a 73.6. Cameron Curl with a 71.7. And Landon Collins with a 69.8. The fifth highest graded player out of the entire defense in that Packers game for the Washington football team. And then the worst graded defenders, Jamin Davis was the lowest with a 58.5. Daron Payne had a 60.7. Cole Holcomb 61.1, Danny Johnson 61.7, and Benjamin St. Juste with a 61.9. I'm actually pretty surprised by a lot of that based on from what I've seen on the film. But hey man, I'm just reporting to y'all how Pro Football Focus felt. Also, Terry McLaurin has 19 contested catches, 8 more than anybody else in the NFL so far this season. I mean, that's a huge congratulations, because I mean, first of all, that's indicative of who Taylor Heinicke is, and you know, the lack of accuracy or just throwing it into crowded spaces where Terry has to just go up and get it. It's not thrown in a way to where Terry McLaurin is just open, like how Aaron Rodgers was throwing Devontae Adams open, all of his receivers open. Taylor Heinicke was just kind of throwing it into an area, and Terry McLaurin will have to go get it. I know Terry McLaurin, every week that we play against an elite quarterback, he just looks like, man, if I could get throws like that. I know he says that to himself. There's no way he doesn't, because he's just as talented. I definitely feel like he's an elite wide receiver like a lot of these other guys, but he's just not able to put up the base stats, the stats that the casual fan can notice. He has to put up crazy advanced statistics like this that casual fans don't even pay attention to. But one thing I do appreciate about Taylor Heinicke is that he will throw it up to Terry McLaurin and let him make a play. That was the most frustrating thing. You know, as much as I talk down on Taylor Heinicke, at the very least he's giving Terry McLaurin a chance. My biggest complaint last year was the fact that we weren't even throwing it to Terry McLaurin. Now Taylor Heinicke forces it in a lot of situations, but I prefer that over just not throwing it to your best player at all, like we were doing last year, man. One thing about Taylor Heinicke, he gonna throw it to Terry. Wait, Mark Ingram just got traded back to the Saints? That's so random. And then lastly, the Washington football team did not punt on Sunday, but only scored 10 points. And according to Pro Football Reference, this was only the 4th time in NFL history that a team punted the ball 0 times and scored 10 points or fewer since 1970, the AFL NFL merger. That is not normal. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please like this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. How do you feel about the franchise quarterback situation? How do you feel about the Washington football team chaos situation with the NFL team meetings, the emails, all of that type of stuff, people lying back and forth? Also, how do you feel about the injuries and the random statistics that I just gave you? And of course, man, I appreciate all of the support, man. Big shouts out to everybody that donates to the channel. A special shouts out to all of my channel members, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. Man, I really appreciate y'all. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.